Plenums installed. Look good. Two different size screws. Side's done. Notice the bracket here. It's the oil line. These guys are just regular bolts, and then the rest are countersunk. Here's some notes on the plenums. It's the hardware that came with the plenums. Notice there's some regular hex bolts, cap bolts, and some countersunk Allen heads. Different lengths here. The plenums have different thicknesses depending on where the bolts go. And notice these countersunk spacers. There's one thin one and three fatter ones. You use these with the cap bolts. Here is the beautiful Riffraff Plenum. They really are amazing to hold. Solid, incredibly gorgeous. Here's my stock glow plug bracket. You can see the bolts here. Notice this one uses the smaller of the countersunk spacers. This one uses a bigger one. This one is smaller because in this spot the plenum is thicker, and over here the plenum is thinner, and that's because of this air rail, I guess. There's a close-up shot before I put them in. There's the O-ring. This didn't give me too much trouble. I was able to just stick it in there. I might have stretched it a little bit as I went. I had my wife hold it with two hands, you know, up here while I worked the rest of it in, and she would just kind of follow me along. And then after I got this done, I flipped it upside down and shook it real hard. That O-ring didn't go anywhere. And there they are, installed into my valley. Notice the valley's painted. That was very difficult. Just because it's hard to get a drill in there. I'll show you the tool I used. I did replace these O-rings in these plugs. Recommendation is to drain as much oil out of these oil rails as you can, because when you go to pull these, man, it just drips. It drips everywhere. I did remove a bunch and it helped. I should have drained more oil out of these. Would have made it less messy. You can see here the turbo's still out. Up pipes are not in. HPOP is not in. At the bottom here you can see my cover installed that I made out of ABS and a yoga mat so that I could spray in here. So I sprayed all this with the plenums removed, and I scrubbed the plenum with simple green, and then I hit it with a wire brush on my Ryobi, and then I painted it just with some O'Reilly's engine paint. And you got to cut this bolt off over here. I think it's right there on the stock plenum, because you can't back it out. And once you cut it off, then you could just spin this out. And I did it with one of these oscillating bimetal blades. Zipped right through it. And here's a look ahead. Some of the other video clips I'll put in, but see here the up pipes are installed, pedestals installed, the HPOP's installed, and the passenger side fuel line is installed. And of course, cylinder or the valve cover gaskets are installed. Yeah, a lot of progress at that point. Still have to put the reservoir in and the new filter and gasket. Here is what I used to hold the power steering pump and alternator bracket up so I could get to the Banjo bolt on the driver's side and the driver's side fuel line. Just a 2x4 and some tie downs. Honestly, I should have Later I removed the alternator. Should have just removed it. It comes out so easy. Should have just removed it. It makes putting the turbo in easier if you get rid of the alternator, because you can lay across it. I'll show later. I had a bunch of pillows. Here is driver's side fuel line. I ended up scrubbing all this. I spent a half hour with simple green and brushes and a spray bottle and 20 years of goo there. So decided to put some elbow grease into it. Got rid of a lot of that stuff. These fuel plugs, there's one back here and there's another one. You can see it right here. There's one. So here's the fuel plugs for the cylinder heads. I cleaned them off real good, put gasola, torqued them in with an 8.5/16. Riffraff tells you how to do that. You know, their instructions are great. I didn't know. But because of their instructions, I knew to use this socket. Worked fantastic. You can see there's fresh install with the gasola. I hand torqued them. I didn't use a torque wrench on these. I just choked up on a 1/4" ratchet and went till they were not moving anymore. There's the other one. And here is the valley with everything removed and before I cleaned it. And you could tell here, man, it's kind of ugly, right? And how much better it looks after being painted. I'm glad I painted it, because you can see oil leaks real easy now. Yeah, it felt good, and felt good to get rid of these tin metal plenums too. The Riffraff ones are just so solid. There's the valley just after I sprayed it. You can see the plenums aren't in, nothing's in there. Here's one of the oil plugs, original O-ring. Here's the damage from me being under the truck cleaning off the back side of the cylinder heads. Like the side of the cylinder heads and the engine closer to the transmission. I just cleaned all that. It's the 20 years of stuff. Simple green, brush, simple green, brush, spray bottle, rags, hour under there maybe, on a half hour each side. I still got to do above the starters, kind of ugly. Here's my method for draining the oil rails. I wish I had a bigger syringe. Just another quick before and after of the valley. I ended up having a little bit of an oil leak from the spider after I got the whole truck together, and it was real nice because I could see there was a little bit of oil down here, and I was like, how the heck did it get down there? And it turned out my factory original boots on the cack tubes were seeping a little bit. So that's when I ended up getting Riffraff cack boots for the top by the spider. They're worth it. They're not 10 times better, they're 100 times better. Yeah, so amazing transformation. It's beautiful.